and this is going to be a colorful episode here. So we're going to bring in some color, and wanted to talk about a few things, kind of wrap up this series of summer flowers. We're getting ready to change gears a little bit into fall, and I just wanted to share a few more ideas because there's so many more things out there. Today I wanted to focus a little bit more on foliages and hydrangeas, those two groups in particular, because both are really, really important, especially this time of year. And I want to make sure if you have any questions, you can feel free to type them in the comments below or in the comments after we release this, so that way you'll be happy to answer anything you might have. And it's great, yeah. And so first of all, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, that we had gotten in some reblooming iris from Shriners, and I wanted to show you. We potted them up. I wanted to plant them in the garden, and that was my plan when I ordered them last spring. They usually arrive in July, but I had to just find some random pots to put them in. But look, so here is where the fans were, and you can see the new growth already popping up out of this tuber, and I think I'm pretty excited. So we're going to let them root in these pots a little bit. We're going to plant them out in the garden, probably, I don't know, maybe in 6 weeks when we're a little bit more ready. And meanwhile, they can start growing and start filling out and doing well. So we have several varieties of these, and we'll show you more about these later. But this is the time of year you can go to Shriners and order iris and get them now. I know that some of the more popular varieties they might be selling out of, but anyway, so before we get to hydrangeas, I do want to say, if you've appreciated this, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we're trying to create a lot more content like this that's hopefully helpful to gardeners or farmers, or maybe you're a florist and you've got some spaces on your property that you'd like to plant a few things that you can cut and harvest, and these flowers might be great options for you. We've got several episodes now in this category, and I think there's tons of ideas. I know one of y'all reached out to me this week and was sharing some of the varieties that you learned about, and I think that's great. So we're going to start off with foliages, not because any other reason other than they can be really exciting. If you're producing bouquets like for a farmer's market, or you trying to plant things in your garden that would have uh, maybe some color interest with foliage, I want to share these two gems right now. So smoke bush or cotinus. Smoke bush is one of those trees. It's actually a tree that has beautiful color. Now this plum color that you see here holds really well, pretty much not year round because it's deciduous, but while it is in leaf, it really holds its color. A lot of these burgundy foliages, when they get super warm, start to green up. They start to turn green, and there's a lot of varieties. So you really want to make sure you really take a look at the varieties, and you want to try to get the darkest ones you can for this reason. Now, of course, in the spring, they produce those beautiful clouds of smoke flower that just looks like smoke. It really does. And florists love them, and sometimes they can be kind of big, but they are really, really beautiful. I will say that of this, I literally just learned this morning about a variety called Magic Torch, which again is a foliage this color. This is not that variety, but it's the foliage this color, and it has the pinky plum colored smoke. But I will say that it blooms later. Like from what I was reading, like they're saying July and August, which wouldn't it be great to have smoke from a smoke tree plant or smoke bush this time of year instead of like in May? I mean, May is fabulous, but it's really more fabulous then. Now this is a green foliage I want to show you. And this is one that doesn't seem very exciting. And so I don't want you to be discouraged by this. A lot of times people plant Forsythia for its yellow blooms, but it's so hard because there's so many farms around the world growing forsythia, and you may have planted forsythia thinking, oh, I'll have a spring branch crop, or I'll have something I can cut in the spring and force, and sometimes it's just hard because either bad weather, frost, whatever, may nip some of the flowers. Well, the foliage is really great for, I mean, this foliage was cut, I think 2 weeks ago, and you can see it's still holding up really well. So if you're looking for a filler for bouquets, for anything, big arrangements, and you need these big, sweeping whips of foliage, this might actually be a great option for you. Is Forsythia foliage. It holds up really well. I'm pretty stoked about this, and so and it's again, these were cut over 2 weeks ago, so it holds really well. Now, the last foliage that I have, and this is a huge family, and it's gotten bigger over the past few years, and it's another plum leaf foliage. This particular one is 9-bark, and this was called, I think, Coppertina, I guess Coppertina, and I love this particular one because it has the dark foliage, but the new growth has more of this lighter coppery kind of color. And I think it gives some depth and texture to it. But this is 9-bark. It is great flowering, but I will say now that the flowers don't hold up super well. You have to cut them really tight, let them open up. And even if you have great pollinators and those flowers produce berries, the berries are really kind of cool too. But sometimes it's just the foliage. And this foliage, the thing I love about it is if you're growing this for foliage, you could start cutting on it as soon as it hardens off, like in July, and you could be cutting on it all the way till frost because it just holds up well and it gives you all this rich color that other colors pop up against. I mean, here's a pink hydrangea. I mean, isn't that pretty? Just the two of those. Or, I mean, I think it goes about with any color. Purple, maybe not purple, but there are so many great colors that just go great with this. So anyway, this is 9-bark, and I would really recommend it. And so I know I said at the beginning when I showed you this that 9-bark, there's a lot of varieties of 9-bark. Well, it comes in a chartreusey, bright green, yellow green foliage. It comes in a darker foliage. I mean, I don't even know how many varieties there are now, but there are a lot of varieties that might be great to add to your garden or to your farm for cutting. Imagine a foliage that can give you color. You don't have to worry about it wilting, and it's just, I don't know, I think it's great. So that's 9-bark. Now, I know I showed some hydrangeas a minute ago, so I wanted to show you. Hydrangeas are a great flower. It's one of my favorites, if you've known me very long. I truly love hydrangeas, and the thing about hydrangeas that I think are so important for everybody to understand is they are a shrub that you could, in theory, have varieties that start from not Mother's Day, but start from, let's say, right after Mother's Day, early June, all the way to fall. You could plant varieties that bloom and stagger and take hydrangeas into your production or your garden for a long period of time. So we're always used to the macrophyllums or mop heads, and these are all from South America, because right now there's really not a whole lot blooming. You can find a lot of antiques right now here in the States. That's really great, of these particular varieties. But all these colors, you can get colors for all of these just about and have them. And I wanted to take a second and show you this. So out of all of these, for some reason, this blue one, when I got home with it, it was wilting. It was really soft, and now it is not soft at all. And I wanted to tell you what I did real quick is a little tip. We have a whole video here on YouTube about how to process hydrangeas, and one of the tips that I talk about is alum powder. And so alum powder is something you can find in like the spice section of your grocery store, and it's used to be used for pickling. It is something that you can literally put a little bit, I don't ever work right out of this container. What I would do is put a little bit in a dish. You can take a cut of the hydrangea, you could tap it in the powder, and you can put it straight in water. That's one way you can use it. You can kind of see it's a little cloudy. I just poured some in, and I didn't measure it. I think I put in maybe, I don't know, I kind of tapped this thing 3 or 4 times, and just a little bit kind of came out because I didn't have it on the wide mouth part of it, just a small part of it. And just in a few hours, this thing was back to, like, you would never have known it was wilting. So the alum powder is a great trick. Even if you're doing floral design, you can put some in your water to help hydrangea last longer. But all of these have benefited from it because they're all really turgid and really pretty. So anyway, macrophyllums are these mophead hydrangeas you can have a lot of times late spring, like after Mother's Day, late May, June. And a lot of these varieties, once they start antiquing, you can still cut on them. So even when they start turning green, green blue, or any different variety of antiquing, you can still cut on your macrophyllums. In fact, this is the great stage for them to dry because a lot of their moisture is gone and they've just started that process. So anyway, these are great hydrangeas. The next hydrangea that I think I would have in my garden for cutting is oak leaf hydrangea, and they're already over with, so I can't even show you any of them right now. But oak leaf hydrangeas are really great because even some people will cut them for fall foliages. It's a great hydrangea. Now, there's this tiny little gap between oak leaf and then some of these other paniculatas. And so one of the next ones to bloom is like Tardiva, which is a lace cap, which I might have some to show you in a future date. But Tardivas are really great, or Tardivas, you might pronounce them. And then we all know very popular Limelights. And so these are Limelights. The bees are in them. They're really loving fresh flowers. But Limelights you can cut kind of early with this white stage, but you can also cut them once they start to turn green, which is why they're called Limelight. Now, I will say you want to make sure that these tips are fully developed. If they're kind of partially developed and you go to cut them, a lot of times that center will wilt or the whole flower will wilt. And also you can go in a lot of times and pinch, like when the new growth comes up, because these bloom on current year's wood. So all the new shoots that come up this year is where the buds are developed. So here you can see when it's starting to turn green, it's completely developed up here. But see how this one's smaller? Sometimes when they're coming up, let's say they're maybe a foot or 18 inches high, you can go back and prune them, and that will cause a lot of these side buds to sprout out. It will make them bloom later, but you will a lot of times get smaller flowers, and sometimes these smaller flowers are easier to work with than these big flowers. So there's a bee in there, yeah. So anyway, those are Limelights. There's a lot of different varieties now, like mini Limelights, which still kind of get big. And then you kind of transition into PGs. And there's lots of categories in all of these that you can extend out with different cultivars and varieties. But PGs a lot of times bloom later, like they're starting to bloom now. There's even Annabelles that are blooming right now. So, I mean, there's all kinds of hydrangeas, is the point, that you can plant and extend your season with hydrangeas from late May all the way almost till frost because of their antiquing. PGs a lot of times will start to turn pink or blush, and I feel like that's really an awesome color also for the fall. All right, so lastly, I wanted to share a couple more things. This is Pampas grass, or Pampas. I pronounce it Pampas. But this is a huge wedding trend right now, and it has been for quite a while. I'm not sure how much longer this trend will last, but I will say that if you have a few plants of it, I'm sure you could sell these plumes. Now, I will say that a lot of times you can see where they've cut down to kind of make these things force out quicker. I will say that when you're a local grower, you can let them, flower. You can let them, all their plumes develop fully, and you'll get bigger, more fabulous plumes than people that have to ship them. Because when you have to ship them, you can't ship them big and fabulous. You have to kind of keep them tight. and then they start to fluff out eventually. Like here's one that's starting to fluff out, but it still doesn't get that big full plume like you would get if you are a local person that could let the flower really truly develop. I had this little guy tucked in there, and I wanted to show you this. And I think some of my pampas has gotten on this particular guy, so it's a little fuzzier. But this is a type of millet. I know it by pearl millet. It almost looks like a giant green cattail. And it's called pearl millet. I don't know if you can see it because they're really tiny. But do you see those little white grains of millet? They look like little pearls. And this is primarily what you're looking for. This is another one of those millets that lasts a super long time. I think that I would probably try to not keep it in the cooler super long because I feel like a lot of times that cold, moist air will sometimes cause it to mold. But this stuff dries, this stuff lasts a super long time. And I actually think it's prettier than cattails. Sometimes cattails can explode and make a big mess. These won't ever do that. But this is pearl millet, and it's one of the many millets that you could grow. I know we've shared some other millets in the past in our series, but this particular one is really great. Okay, now I'm going to show you this. This is grain millet, and there's a lot of different names for some of these, so you'll have to kind of do some due diligence to make sure you have the right one. This particular grower is what this one, he calls this is grain millet. I will say that there's also sorghums, broom corns, other varieties that are more loose, have a much more open head on top of it. I like this one because of this coppery bronze color that it gets. I feel like it is definitely great for later in the season. I will share that we saw a lot of this green. So when it's actually more green, it just has a totally different look to it. And it can really be great as far as just mixing with all the late summer colors, all the yellows and golds and all those types of tones. The green mixes with that. Even if you're doing weddings and you're using blushes, and it's just the green goes with everything. This is a little bit more fall feeling, but it is really, again, it's a tall stem. I don't know if you can dry this real well because I have a feeling it would kind of mold up inside the seed head a little bit. But I also like the sorghum, which looks very, very similar. It's just instead of being a tight, compact column of grain, it's more open. These panicles or whatever they're called, sorry, they kind of flop out, and it just makes it seem more like a plume. And I will say that it's a really special fall item. So just to recap just a second, showing you some of these different grains that make great stems for this time of year. Some of these stems are also used for like a green crop, like to just fill in a space while you're preparing land. Also, we have all this different foliages, which I would really recommend because, again, this is something that you plant. They're a little more expensive than an annual, but when you plant them, they'll just keep producing foliage over and over again. And it's a no-brainer at that point because that one time does it all. And then, of course, hydrangeas. Extending your season with hydrangeas is also really good. And all the different colors, but also all the different varieties. We've talked about the limelights, we've talked about tardivas, we've talked about, the PG hydrangea, oak leaf hydrangea. All these hydrangeas can definitely help extend your season. And lastly, I know these iris don't look like much now, but next year, this variety, this is called Pure as Gold, and this is one of the rebloomers. So it'll bloom in the spring, and then it'll bloom again in the fall. Now, you have to live somewhere where your season's long enough to do that reblooming, but if you live in somewhere, which in Nashville we are, we'll get 2 blooms out of it, which is like twice the beauty for one plant. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us here on YouTube. And if this is your first time watching this, I want to just encourage you to go back and watch the other episodes that we did in this series. This will be the last installment on this series. We could keep going with a lot of other flowers, but I think we're going to try some other types of series in the future. I hope you found this helpful, and y'all take care. All right, bye.